Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the entire MBF team, I'd like to welcome everyone to Let's Talk About Prevention. If you've joined us for prevention webinars, welcome back. I'm Lynn Layton, the President and CEO at the Monique Burr Foundation for Children, also known as MBF. The mission of MBF is to provide the best, comprehensive, evidence-based, and evidence-informed prevention education programs for children and teens. We've reached over 3.5 million students with our prevention education programs that cover bullying, cyberbullying, all types of abuse, digital safety, exploitation, trafficking, and more. As we wrap up the Let's Talk About Prevention series, the MBF team is thrilled to bring you our final speakers today to tell everyone more about not only MBF prevention education programs, but also about an initiative with our partners at Darkness to Light called Prevent 360, designed to better protect all children. In order to allow maximum time for their presentation and your questions, I'm keeping your bios short, but they're great humans, so please visit our websites and learn more about them. So let me introduce you quickly to today's speakers. First, Katelyn Brewer is a high-energy entrepreneurial executive and is passionate about empowering people, organizations, and communities to enhance the impact of social movements. As President and CEO of Darkness to Light, the nation's leading advocate for the prevention of child sexual abuse, her expertise in transforming organizational cultures, achieving programmatic scale, and implementing behavioral change communication lends invaluable insight to the larger conversation of child protection. Katelyns' dedication to innovation, emerging technologies, and cross-team alignment empower nonprofits to achieve critical social goals. Her work has resulted in sustainable change for communities, both nationally and internationally. Katelyn is a graduate of Wheaton College in Boston, Massachusetts, with a bachelor's in international relations and French. And next, let me introduce you to MBF's very own Vice President of Programs, Stacy Pendarvis. Stacy is a social worker and educator with 2 master's degrees from East Carolina University in social work and academic psychology. She has developed adult and child-focused curricula and resources, managed community and agency projects related to child protection, and helped many organizations and communities establish prevention initiatives. Stacy has been at the Monique Burr Foundation for Children since May of 2011. Her role as Vice President of Programs is to oversee all program prevention and outreach related activities. She leads the development of all prevention curricula, trainings, and resources, directs the program evaluation research team, develops and conducts community and professional trainings, and collaborates with a multitude of strategic partners. Stacy is also the Secretary of the National Coalition to Prevent Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation. We are so thankful to get to work with these 2 champions every day and know that you're going to learn a lot from them. So thank you, Katelyn and Stacy, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lynn, and welcome, Katelyn. I'm going to screen share our PowerPoint for today, and then we will get started. Most of you are familiar, if you've been attending this webinar series this summer, you've seen me hosting with others. So today's a little bit different for us. So thank you for your patience with that. But you know, over this summer, we've talked about so many different things. We've talked about child abuse and trafficking and digital safety and exploitation and ACEs and the consequences of abuse to children. We've talked about the research. Today, we're hoping to kind of tie it all up for you and offer you a solution to what you can do about all these problems that we all experience in our own communities. So I'm going to start and let Katelyn introduce herself and Darkness to Light for us.
Lovely. Well, first of all, Stacy, thank you so much for having me on today, and Lynn for the very generous introduction. It's honestly such a pleasure to be working in collaboration with you all so well. So for those of you who don't know who Darkness to Light is, we are a 20-year-old organization that focuses strictly on the education of adults to prevent child sexual abuse. About 20 years ago, we had an issue in Charleston, South Carolina at a private school, which really rocked the community. And a number of the people who worked at the Child Advocacy Center were tired of waiting for the children to get to the Advocacy Center for them to receive help. And so they felt like it was important for adults to recognize that child sexual abuse is preventable. So they embarked on creating what we now know as Stewards of Children, which is an evidence-informed training that's about 2 hours long. And we roll that training out in 50 states and 17 countries in person, and about 76 countries online. And so this training really helps adults walk through 5 steps so you understand what child sexual abuse is, you understand how to minimize opportunity for those who seek to hurt children. You understand what, recognizing it looks like if it has happened, and then what it means to react responsibly, whether it's to the actual victim who's disclosing or to report in a more formal way. And so I have a team of about 18 people. We work with about 13,000 facilitators, and we are really dedicated to making sure that adults feel equipped to help kids.
And Katelyn, so why don't you talk a little bit more about adult-focused prevention?
So there's really this idea that Darkness to Light lives by, which is the fact that adults are primarily responsible for the prevention of child sexual abuse. And the reason why is because if you think about abuse, you think about it as a power dynamic, and children are never equally as powerful as those who are abusing them. And so in order to help protect kids more, adults have to make decisions every single day that create safer environments for children to live and play in. We understand, however, that there are critiques of adult education. No one education is the be-all, end-all solution. And the reality is, adults have a lot on their plate. And so, they're thinking about all the games that they have to go to, the schedules, the stress at work, and those who have children and are working with youth really need to, understand why this is a priority. And so we understand that adults working with youth have a lot on their plates. There is still a group of individuals and professionals who feel like if you teach children to say no, then no is an extensive education, and adults don't necessarily have to be responsible on a day-to-day basis. We vehemently disagree with this approach, but there is certainly a group of individuals out there who still believe this. One of the things that I learned as I started to work in this world a little bit more is that research on child sexual abuse is hard to come by, particularly evidence that establishes that prevention education programs work. To establish a counterfactual and to get to a place where you can say that prevention education has actually prevented a child from being hurt, you're talking millions and millions of dollars, and historically that kind of money hasn't been out there allocated. And so right now there's still, on both sides, both the adult focused and child focused training, that it's really hard to prove primary prevention. You're also dealing with, a population of about 42 million adult survivors. And so when you are in communities and working with adults to try and help prevent kids, it can be re-traumatizing for adults who are survivors who have either never come forward or have come forward and are still in a really difficult place in their journey from moving from victim to survivor. So we have to be really careful about when we are talking to adults not to re-traumatize them. And the other misconception, I think, is that, children will speak up if they're being abused. And there are some children who will. And so we should acknowledge that. But the reality is most children do not disclose, or if they do disclose, they disclose to a friend and they ask that friend never to say anything and keep a secret. And so their abuse continues on. And unfortunately, we need to address that by educating adults. Stacy?
Yes, I agree with all of that. So let's flip a little bit and I'll tell you a little bit more about me. And it's interesting, a lot of people don't know, I actually started in prevention 4+ years ago. I don't remember, but when I really got very focused on child abuse prevention, I was working at a child advocacy center in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And the first thing that I did was come to Charleston, and I was trained as a darkness to light facilitator. And then later became an instructor, and later worked throughout the region of North Carolina to train other facilitators and spread the movement throughout that entire state. And it was only when my ex-husband retired from the military and we moved to Florida that I happened upon the Monique Burr Foundation. I was actually looking for a partner to help me spread stewards throughout Florida, because when I came to Florida, we only had 12 trained darkness to light facilitators in the state. And so at that time, when I met Lynn at the Monique Burr Foundation for Children, they had just embarked on this journey of creating a child-focused curriculum for the state. And they were not in a position to take on another program. Long story short, I went to work for them as a program manager and have just continually kind of advanced through the organization. But so for me, this partnership with Darkness to Light is like coming full circle back to kind of my roots and where I started with prevention. So that's interesting. I too am of the mindset and have always believed that there is that part of this conversation that we have to agree and admit that adults are responsible for protecting kids. But it's interesting, when I started at the foundation and I started reviewing the curriculum that was existing and started developing more and started looking into what the research said, it was evident to me that there were a lot of things that we can educate and empower children with, strategies and safety rules that can help those adults do a better job of that. There are still a lot of critiques for child-focused prevention. Some that the concepts are too complex for children to learn, that they can't defend themselves against perpetrators, that there's no empirical evidence that establishes that it actually works, and that it may provoke negative effects, and that it's not fair or moral to expect children to stop sexual abuse. And, I think at some point in time, those things may have been valid, but the way youth-focused prevention is developed now, it takes into account so many factors. And I think to a fair extent, research has shown that none of these things are actually, in fact, truthful to the extreme that, there are going to be some children that can't defend themselves against a perpetrator. But we also know, if our goal is to educate them, for example, with red flags prior to that even happening, we can stop some abuse before it even happens. If kids are educated about what the red flags look like, they're educated to talk to a safe adult. So, there's a lot of research that exists that supports youth-focused prevention. And so I think for me, having done both and being involved in the world of both adult and youth-focused prevention, I think it's important that we talk about using both. We know that educating adults, Katelyn, as you said, they're the ones that are in those positions to minimize the opportunities. They're the ones to create the policies that will better protect children. So there's so many great aspects about educating adults that it's critical. And we would never in any way want anyone to think that it should not be a priority, because we believe that it should. On the flip side of that, we know that despite some adults' best intentions, children are still going to be in situations where, that potential exists. And you know, from our perspective, it would be unethical not to educate and empower them with strategies that they can use to protect themselves. So if you think about it, really best case scenario, and what we're here to talk about today, is the fact that doing both is a better way to protect children. So it's not an either or proposition, it's an and proposition. And by educating both adults and children, I think we have a much higher chance that we will truly protect kids from sexual abuse and exploitation. Many of you on this webinar today will recognize this graphic, the social ecological model, which, if you're not familiar with it, it explains that there are factors in multiple places in an individual's life that will impact their behavior. When we apply this to prevention, what it says is there is a complex interplay between individual, relationship, community, and societal factors that put people at risk for violence or protect them from experiencing violence. So in short, it's a better way to address prevention because it focuses on the different levels and the interaction in those levels. So when we first sat down as partners, the Darkness to Light team and the Monique Burr Foundation for Team, we had many conversations about what that looked like and kind of developed our own model based on the social ecological model. And so we were very intentional about the components of this, and down to the part we had, I remember the discussion we had, Katelyn, about do children go in the center? Do children go on the outside? Where do they go? And so as I was thinking about this, I thought, you know, it makes sense. We put them in the center because they are who we're trying to protect, but also because we know that there are strategies that they can learn to help protect themselves. And then when they're surrounded by adults and organizations and communities and society that really does prioritize the protection of children, they're much safer. So Katelyn, why don't you at this point, I kind of alluded to the beginning of our collaboration. So why don't you take a few minutes and explain, I think let's take a step back, explain how Prevent 360 was born and why we decided to partner, how that happened.
Absolutely. So, you know, I joined Darkness to Light about 4 years ago, and we had a director of programs at that time named Erica Rowell. And Erica was very familiar with the Monique Burr child-focused program and, you know, sort of advocated that I learn a little bit more. She also talked about some of the other child-focused programs, but really felt strongly about the Monique Burr Foundation and the relationship, quite frankly, that she had with you, Stacy, and her belief in your ability, you know, to sort of encapsulate all the things that you've just mentioned. And so Darkness to Light historically has never advocated for one specific child-focused program. We've always, you know, tried to sort of say, these are the partners out there. You know, we appreciate and support all efforts for child-focused programming. And when I got to know you and I got to know Lynn, and I heard so many of the similar values in terms of your both internal organizational values and how you operate as individuals, but then also your commitment to research, your commitment to trauma-informed approaches. It seemed like such a natural fit and a sisterhood, if you will, of the two organizations. And I personally believe in collaboration, you know, over competition any day. And so as we began to learn more, and I found out that you were doing a number of research projects with David Finkelhor, it became very clear to me that we were on a path to sort of endorse and, you know, connect on a much deeper level in terms of our organizational goals. And, you know, I think for me, being leaders in prevention education, Darkness to Light is only going to be more successful when we are approaching prevention from a complete holistic standpoint in terms of age. We do so in terms of our adult-focused work, but to partner with, you know, you as leaders in prevention for child-focused education, it continues to help us think through how we, change and modify some of the education that we're giving to adults. I think what I also loved about learning more about the Monique Burr Foundation was that you are as flexible and as willing to offer, customized solutions for any size organization. As nonprofits, we have that flexibility to be able to sort of really listen to what our partners need. And that was a value of darkness to light that I really wanted to see in you as an organization. And so together, we believe that children are the priority. Children's rights are human rights, and both organizations look at making their safety a top concern, whether it makes adults or anyone uncomfortable. We believe that prevention is everyone's responsibility, and by everyone's responsibility, that doesn't necessarily mean the responsibility is equal, but it certainly means that we need to make sure that everyone is educated to the age appropriate level. And again, collaboration is most assuredly the solution. It is, without collaboration, I don't think we'd get nearly as far.
Right. And it's interesting, as I said, when I started at the Monique Burr Foundation, I actually started to try to get stewards moving in Florida. And we just weren't in a place where that was possible. So, every 6 months, 8 months, I'd go into Lynn's office and I'd say, hey, are we ready to start doing some work with Darkness to Light? Are we ready to start offering stewards through MBF? Not yet. No. And I just remember one day I walked into her office and asked that question. It must have been, I don't know, she could tell you, probably the 12th, 15th time I had asked. And her response was, yeah, I think we are. And I was like, wait, what? Wasn't at all prepared for it, but and so from there it's just like you said, then we met and you met Lynn, and we started many conversations, and it's been a great collaboration. And like you, we agree that this partnership really has just elevated our work, makes us think about things that we otherwise weren't thinking about, makes us helps us focus on what are the best practices and the things that we need to be telling our facilitators and organizations and communities, because it's not enough just to say, hey, take this program and implement it in your schools, because we would still be missing a huge piece of what we need to do to protect kids. And with a mission to protect children, I think it behooves us to think in broader terms about just what our specific piece of that puzzle is. So I think, in that regard, Prevent 360 has been a great thing for MBF as well. You mentioned both organizations focus on research. So I thought we'd take just a minute and talk about the research and what we've learned over the past few decades as far as what works in prevention research, as far as abuse and exploitation, and what empirical data supports. So we know there are different levels of prevention. There's primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. And like stewards, MBF programs are primary prevention programs. We're trying to reach the masses with this to provide that educational and empowerment piece. So I think that's important for people to understand. We do want to address protective and risk factors, because that's what the research tells us we need to incorporate into awareness messages, prevention education, trainings. If we don't look at what the risk factors are and address those and instill those protective factors in children and in adults to help them, we're going to miss a big part of that. And I think both of our organizations do a great job of that. As you just mentioned, Katelyn, everything should be developmentally appropriate. We know that that's an important component. Things that have a proven track record are parent education, early childhood intervention, and home-based visitation. The more educational side of things has not been studied as in depth as those programs have for many, many years. But we're beginning to see more and more education that tells us that both research-based programs or evidence-informed programs for adults and children are effective. It's interesting that you brought up the concept of it's really hard to prove that prevention works. and, you know, I was going to add when you said millions and millions of dollars, and also years and years and years of research, because you would have to follow kids for very long period of time to know whether they indeed had been victimized. And it would be I am in no way a researcher, and I know I have a few researchers on here who are going to email me and say, you got that all wrong, but I believe would require an enormous sample size. And so it's really hard. One thing that we have always said to folks is, we may not be the right program for you. I'm going to say we are, just because I'm biased and I think we are the best program out there, but there are other great programs out there, and we don't want to minimize the work that those organizations are doing. I know that sometimes people get kind of trapped in this evidence-based language that we're hearing more and more. We have been some amazing researchers, like you mentioned, including David Finkelhor. But it is a very time-consuming process and a very expensive process. So we have always said, while there may be great programs out there that don't have the same level of evidence as we have started to kind of compile for our programs, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not good programs. They may be following all the best practices and doing all the right things, but without that ability to do research, they don't have that. So, we try very hard not to say, oh, we're the be all end all of child-focused prevention. I think your endorsement has elevated us to a different level, because you have so many facilitators around the world that, value and trust your judgment. And so we're super appreciative of that. But we do believe that research is essential. And I'll share one quick story with everybody. When we met with David Finkelhor for the first time, we actually flew him to Jacksonville, and then we brought our research team that he had selected from the University of Florida over, and we all met at the Jacksonville airport in a conference room. And I found it very interesting that the first question that they asked us was, what are you going to do if we do this study and it comes back and says that it's not working? Kids aren't learning the skills and the techniques that they need to learn, and it's not great results. And we said, well, then you're going to tell us how to fix that, because our goal isn't to just amass research for the purpose of amassing research.
Yeah.
To make sure that what we're doing works. And I know that you guys have those same beliefs as we do. So,
without a doubt.
And that's where we are now contributing to the evidence base of school-based prevention education, and how it can work, and it is working, and it can be successful. And so I just kind of wanted to give everybody kind of the update of where we are with prevention and why it's so important to our two organizations. But for you, what else was it that kind of propelled you? As you said, historically, Darkness to Light has never endorsed a child-focused program. So that was a big deal. I think that was a big deal for you guys. It was a big deal for us. And I think it was a big deal for your facilitators. So kind of talk about what prompted that, even more than just the fact that we became an evidence-based program, or we were committed to research.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, and just I see the comments about my audio. I'm so sorry, team, I don't have headphones, otherwise I would put them in. So I think for me, honestly, it's the way that you all take that grassroots approach the same way that we do, right? And so one of the reasons why I love Darkness to Light is because we have a solution, but that solution can be rolled out and modified in every community based on who the power players are that are going to influence that behavior change. So we have, players in Pennsylvania with Penn State who are rolling out curriculum in a number of different districts there, who are doing it the way that the communities in Pennsylvania want to be talked to. In Bermuda, we have, SCARs working with the facilitators who are really keen on making sure that it's appropriate for the local Bermudian population. And so what I love about those partners is that they've taken our curriculum and they've made it their own, you know, with sort of wraparound services in their local communities. And so I saw a very similar approach, you know, with the Monique Burr Foundation in terms of the train the trainer model, and you all being able to, you know, implement in schools, in local communities, and give the power to the local organizations to be able to, you know, roll this out as they see fit. I think from a strategic standpoint, you know, we're also looking at a changing landscape nationally. For those of you who are aware, Aaron's Law now is in 37 states, and it's been introduced, or it's being introduced in 2019 in another 11. And for those of you who don't know Aaron is a survivor of child sexual abuse and has always said that, you know, if she had been taught about what was actually happening to her and how to, you know, communicate, then she may not have been abused, or may not have been abused for as long as she was. Right. And so, you know, for her, she decided that her life's journey was to lobby states to mandate the prevention education for children. In most states, Aaron's Law is required to be provided to students. In some states, it's required in K through 12, but not all. And in other states, it also requires that staff and faculty be educated. Some of you might also be familiar with Jenna's Law, which does mandate both child-focused programming and adult-focused programming. Those of you coming in from Texas, there's a very robust Jenna's Law in Texas. And so they're very complementary laws, and they're really helping organizations like ours and like the Monique Burr Foundation reach some of these critical mandated reporters with the proper education so that they know how to take care of the kids that they're serving every day.
Yeah, I think for us, we tend to see when a state passes Aaron's Law, we tend to see a lot more activity in that state. And, you know, it always kind of saddens me that it takes the legislature saying to folks, this is what we need to do to protect kids. I would love to see Aaron's Law in every state be K through 12 and mandate both adult and child focused prevention. I hope with funding. Yes, it's important. We get a lot of those calls. So we're required to provide this education, but we don't have any money. So yeah, so very important. So I think Prevent 360, whether a state mandates adult and child or just child as a part of Aaron's Law, I think Prevent 360 is a natural fit in those communities because, you know, we can always do more than we're required to do to protect kids. And when you know that this works and works better, why wouldn't you want to do that? So let's get into kind of more about what exactly is Prevent 360. For folks who've never heard of it, they may not be Darkness to Light facilitators. And I just realized that I had a poll and I think missed it. I'm going to go ahead and do that poll just because I'm curious. So we're going to do a poll real quick and kind of want to get a feel for what you guys are actually doing as far as prevention in your local communities. Are you doing adult only, child only, both, or neither?
This is so exciting. Look at all of you who are already doing adult and child focused programming.
That's great. So we're at about 62%. Yeah, clearly most people on the webinar today are doing both, which is great. And if you're a part of that kind of audience doing one or the other, hopefully today we can persuade you to add what you're not doing. So I'll go ahead and share those results with everybody. So 60% doing both and about almost equal, 17 and 16% doing one or the other. So back to the PowerPoint, I'm the queen of forgetting to advance slides or launch polls or whatever. So
no, that's great information. Thanks for remembering that.
But let's talk about really what Prevent 360 is. And I'll let you start, Katelyn.
Sure. So, I mean, honestly, for those of you who are doing, both the program, child focused and adult focused, it's clear that that's what people want to do. And I think we knew that. A lot of our facilitators at Darkness to Light were begging us to either create our own child focused program, which we definitely didn't want to do, or partner, in the way that we're partnering with the Monique Burr Foundation and have this type of collaboration so that they can go to their communities with a holistic, comprehensive approach. And so it really was the grassroots call to action from our facilitators that got us thinking, okay, it's time. It's time for us to sort of find that partner and create that comprehensive approach. And in order to do that, you were very generous in sort of saying that partnering with us has sort of elevated your brand, but I feel very similarly, in terms of our partnership with you. And we are nationally known, we're internationally known, and we have an effective program. We know we do. And so we weren't going to partner again with anyone that, sort of lived outside of those parameters and you do. So we wanted to make sure that when we came together, that we were going to address risks and protective factors on a multitude of levels. I think one of the things that we love about your program is that it has polyvictimization aspects to it as well. And, Darkness to Light obviously focuses specifically on the prevention of child sexual abuse, but we do understand that there's cross-functionality even in our 5 steps. I mean, we've talked about how the 5 steps can be applied to physical abuse, emotional abuse, etc. And so there's clear symmetry between the two, your 5 safety rules and our 5 steps, and we loved that. I think, which leads me into our next point, which is that these complementary programs provide common language for adults and children. So the whole point of educating an adult is that when an educated child discloses, they know what they're supposed to do. And so if you're not teaching them the same language, and a child discloses and says one thing and an adult hears a different thing, then you still have a problem. And so, the longer we partner, the more we are going to be able to build curriculum together so that not only are you sort of hitting a whole age range of education, but you're also hitting them with complementary education in the same community, so that you increase the impact of and the capability of those adults to understand what a child is saying when they do, have conversations. We've talked ad nauseum about how we're both committed to research and evaluation. And then finally, just in sort of basic, we love the fact that partnering with y'all, you were willing to do a cost savings and discount for those who are willing to do both organizations trainings in their community. We're nonprofits, we got to keep the light on, and so we do sell our trainings, but we want to make it affordable for all organizations and schools and whatnot to participate in what we have going on. So we love the fact that you all, again, were flexible and willing to work with us on a cost savings approach for our partners.
Yeah, and just a couple of quick follow-ups on that. As you mentioned, our programs are comprehensive, and we base that on polyvictimization research, which says that if a child is victimized in one way, they're more likely to be victimized in other ways. So our programs teach kids 5 safety rules that they can use in any unsafe situation. We address bullying, cyberbullying, digital safety, all 4 types of abuse. In the older grades, we address trafficking, exploitation, relationship abuse, sexual assault. And I have always said, I felt like the Darkness to Light 5 steps to protecting children are applicable to all of those types of victimization as well. Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is you're giving adults a foundation on which to protect kids. So it doesn't matter if it's just sexual abuse. It can also help parents help protect their kids from bullying and obviously digital dangers and exploitation. You guys are already kind of in that space. So yeah, and the complementary language I love. One example just for everybody who's listening, and I think we're being pretty transparent and honest here about you know, the fact that we're learning from each other, and this is an ongoing initiative, and we're still figuring this out, what exactly this is. But I recall we had a conversation, we use the term safe adults in our curriculum. That's what we teach kids. And we were very intentional about choosing that language, because a lot of people say, you know, talk to a trusted adult, but we also teach kids that it's often a trusted adult that harms them. And so we were very intentional about saying a safe adult. So it's someone that you trust, but it's also someone who doesn't break the safety rules, who ensures that you're safe. And you guys have started kind of using that terminology as well since we had that conversation. And so I think that proves to everybody the commitment that we have to ensuring this common language.
That's such a great example, Stacy.
And ensuring that these programs work well together. And like you said, as we develop more and more, I only see that growing. So, so what have we done to date? Obviously, we have created a logo that we're in love with. Katelyn and I just talked about that. We all talked about this on a call. We have calls once a week. We just talked about this, about every time we look at this logo, we fall in love with it a little bit more. Yeah. And that was not a situation where we sat down at a table and it just came out. I mean, it was very intentional about what the circles meant and the colors meant and the feel that you got when you looked at it. The Darkness to Light team has created an amazing Prevent 360 website, and we are continuing to build resources and, you know, add to what you can get from being a Prevent 360 partner. So Katelyn, do you want to talk a little bit about how widespread Prevent 360 has become since we kind of joined forces?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible. Our facilitators have just sort of gravitated to this, you know, collaborative work, and so you can see we're sort of reaching almost 25 states with Prevent 360, you know, work, and Bermuda. Debbie, I saw you write a comment, so we're happy to have SCARS on the webinar today, and I think what we're learning is that. You know, our facilitators are really excited about the opportunity to do a comprehensive training package, and they're also giving us feedback in terms of this is what's working, this is what we'd like to see, and so we're excited to take all of that feedback and continue, like I said, to modify and to grow our offerings. And so one of the places that we are actually putting together a case study on is Susie's Place. And Susie's Place, I think I saw some Indiana people. Susie's Place, you know, they developed a prevention strategy back in about 2014 for adults. And, you know, they work in sports programs in schools. They also work in religious institutions. And they're in over 38 counties in Indiana. And so in 2017, you know, even though, again, they realized that it's an adult's responsibility to, you know, keep a child safe, they really wanted to include a child-focused program. And so basically at about the same time, the Indiana state legislation passed the Senate Bill 355, which requires schools to teach age-appropriate evidence-based protection skills to all grades in Indiana. And so, you know, we're working to finalize that case study with Susie's Place. They're actually reviewing it as we speak. And, you know, they are definitely one of our premier Prevent 360 partners. So we actually recommend you will be able to download that case study on the Prevent 360 website in the near future. For those of you who have registered and are watching today, we are going to send out an email when that case study is approved. So you will have access to it, and you can sort of send your information and receive. But these are the types of helpful education pieces, you know, that we're looking to provide to our partners, to give them examples of, you know, is this actually working, and are there organizations out there who are doing it, and, you know, what do they see the benefits and the pitfalls are, and we want to know that, you know, just as much as you do. So here's to Susie's Place and SCARS and all of the organizations who are really sort of pioneers, I think, out there helping us, you know, fulfill our Prevent 360 dreams.
Yes. And we hope that, after attending today, if you're not already a Prevent 360 partner, that, if you recognize the importance of the comprehensive approach and you want the best evidence-based and evidence-informed programs and to better protect children in your community, that you will join us. We have firm, strong beliefs, but as Katelyn said, we're also very flexible. And I know both organizations will do whatever we can to help you get this moving in your community, whether you're doing one or the other or neither. Because ultimately our goal is to reach more children. So you can go to the Prevent 360 website. We also have an email and a phone number if you want to reach out. Another collaborative thing that we're doing is we have a customer service team. We have a point person at Darkness to Light and a point person at MBF that communicate and collaborate for our customer service when folks are trying to get started or they need, help with situations or whatever. So, we're doing everything that we know to do. And as Katelyn said, we're also totally open to feedback from our partners. What is working? What isn't working? What do you need from us? Because as we go, we see this growing and changing and just being very organic and providing the necessary tools for our partners to better educate adults and kids. And so you're a part of that. We consider you, a Prevent 360 partner. So I think we're close to running out of time, and I think I'll let Lynn join us again and see if we've had any questions, unless Katelyn, you have any final thoughts you wanted to share?
No, I think we covered everything we hoped to today.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, I'm coming.
You're here.
I tell you what, I am a much better CEO than I am doing this. Yeah, Stacy's extremely, there's a reason why she's been the host every week and not me. So anyway, thank you, Katelyn and Stacy. You did a great job and shared a lot of really wonderful information. So we have a little less than 10 minutes, or about 10 minutes left, that we can have some questions. And if the audience, if you guys have any other questions and you haven't submitted them yet, if you would please go ahead and do that while we are getting started. So first question. How do we address compassion fatigue for those working in the field? And I know that this is a kind of a not specific to either program, but I think maybe sharing some thoughts could be very helpful because it is very hard to do this work day after day.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, if my team has heard me say it once, they've probably heard me say it a million times. I truly believe in meeting people where they are. And so if people are telling you that they're overwhelmed and they just don't have bandwidth for it right now, it's okay. We have to acknowledge that there are so many issues, particularly right now with COVID, that people are worried and stressed and focused on, and their attention is diverted. Just because they say, no, it does not mean it's no forever. It's just no right now. And so, find a way to sort of rethink what you're working on and come back again, and, in a few weeks, in a couple months, but don't stop. Just recognize, that compassion fatigue happens with all topics. I've worked on African development. I've worked on, veteran-oriented nonprofit work. It happens everywhere. And so you just have to continue to believe that the next time you talk to them is going to be the time where they're going to understand and they're going to get it.
Okay. Thanks, Katelyn. I'm going to jump to a little different series of questions simply because they seem to be very popular in our Q&A, and we had some questions about it beforehand. Number one, how can this information be utilized in public schools? And then the second part of that is, can both programs be offered virtually? So maybe in your answers, you can kind of tie the two of those together.
Yeah, I'll start. Obviously, our programs were developed for for school systems, public schools, private schools. And it's interesting, we are, you know, as we both shift into more of a virtual presentation of our trainings, we've long said we are missing out on virtual school kids and homeschooled kids. And so COVID has kind of forced us down that path. But for us, I know one thing that we're doing is we're really promoting stewards of children, as well as the new module on helping kids in crisis with our back to school campaigns. So, you know, we have about 3,500 facilitators that use our programs, and Prevent 360 has really given us more of a commitment and a momentum to encourage those schools to now add stewards of children to their professional development. So, you know, that's kind of how we're doing it. And I'll finish with the virtual and then I'll let you respond, Katelyn. We, you know, our curriculum was developed to be presented in a classroom, and it's evident that that's not going to be sufficient this year and in the foreseeable future. So we are in the process of creating a virtual facilitator guide that will allow all of our facilitators to take our existing lessons and present them remotely on whatever platform they're using. It's going to be, there will be terms and conditions. There's best practices for presenting to students in K-12 virtually, and then adaptations to the actual lessons on how do you take an in-class activity like a touchdown squat down and present that instead virtually. We are also exploring what does this look like to develop a true virtual lesson, like with an educational platform like Nearpod or something like that. So we're going down that path. And I know, Katelyn, I'll let you speak because you guys are also now in the virtual facilitator space and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we sort of transitioned at light speed. Thank you very much, COVID. So my team, obviously, you know, we all lost sleep towards the beginning of COVID, and still very much are concerned about what's going on with children nationally and internationally. So we first we released a Preventing Children in a Crisis training, which is a free 30-minute training, and you can send that out to all your constituents. That can be taken online. It helps families and a safe caregiver think through a family crisis plan and how you might be able to keep your kids safe in small ways. And the second thing is our stewards of children, which our facilitators give in person, you know, throughout the country. We piloted a virtual facilitation program because we wanted to make sure that we, you know, maintain the integrity and the trauma-informed approach. There's a lot of people who come and, you know, even though we advise you don't disclose during stewards of children because it's a learning environment, sometimes it does happen. And so we wanted to make sure that those, you know, if it did happen, that we were at a place where we could help our facilitators navigate a trauma-informed approach and reaction to anyone who does disclose. So we are now live with that. If you are a facilitator, we are waiving the fee right now to become a virtual facilitator. So, and that goes away in about a week. So I would definitely log on to our website right now, fill out the application to become a virtual facilitator. And we are approving them as much as we can. We've had over almost 700 people apply to be virtual facilitators. So have patience with us. We will get to you, we promise. But as long as you fill out that application before, you know, the fee waiver is gone, you won't have to pay. So.
And just a tip for everyone out there, if you're trying to get into your schools in this age of COVID and virtual remote distance learning, right now, because a lot of districts across the country have pushed back their start dates, right now, a lot of schools are in their pre-planning stage, which is when teachers are doing a lot of training and professional development. So it's a great time to reach out to them and say, hey, we have these, this availability. We can do a virtual training or you can take stewards online, but it's a great time to promote that professional development through the virtual platforms with these school districts that are getting ready.
Yeah, and don't forget there's continuing education credits. So, you know, that's a huge selling point in your communities, and certainly it's, you know, cheaper than a lot of other continuing education credits.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. As we end today, we want to thank you guys again, Katelyn and Stacy, for sharing their time with all of us. And of course, we thank you for joining us today. If you have questions that we weren't able to get to today, visit prevent360.org. And lastly, we hope this series has helped every one of you with your own professional development over the summer when so many conferences were canceled due to COVID. MBF was here to support you. We care about you. We encourage you. And we hope that we will be able to do this again and that you will join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.